These are 10 cards you should always draft in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, always is a bit of a strong word, so let's just say you should strongly consider taking these commons and uncommons when you see them because they are great and will help you win more games. First up is Mechanized Ninja Cavalry. It's one red-white hybrid for a 1/1 artifact creature robot ninja, and when it enters, you create a 1/1 colorless robot artifact creature token. Now, oftentimes with these hybrid cards, they'll fit at their best in their particular hybrid color combination, and Mechanized Ninja Cavalry is great in red-white decks, making 2 bodies on turn 2, and then in the late game when you have any cards with the Alliance mechanic out, then you'll get to trigger them twice when Mechanized Ninja Cavalry comes into play because it makes 2 bodies for just 1 card. But Mechanized Ninja Cavalry is also great and fully takes advantage of the fact that it is hybrid mana by being really strong in the other decks that can cast it in the format. In blue-red, you're getting a card that makes 2 artifacts for 1 card, which is also really strong for triggering those synergies. And in black-white, you're getting a card that is going to make you 2 bodies to help you either like sneak the Mechanized Ninja Cavalry back and then replay it to get another 1/1 body, or if your opponent does have a bunch of blockers, being able to go wide and get past them can sometimes let you sneak in a card when you really need to, even if that involves using the token creature to sneak in one of your bigger plays. So Mechanized Ninja Cavalry is a great 2-drop for any of the decks that can cast it, and because of that flexibility, it's really nice to take it early. Next is Tainted Treats, which is a lot less flexible than the Mechanized Ninja Cavalry, but is a really, really powerful card for black-green. It's a 1 black-green for an instant, destroy target artifact or creature. If its mana value was 4 or less, create a food token. So oftentimes, these cards that are multiple colors aren't as worth taking early because they are inflexible, but Tainted Treats is so powerful that it's still worth strong consideration early on in your draft, because destroying a creature and getting a food is oftentimes going to be something you do. If you're destroying a 4-mana creature, you're still trading up on mana. You spent 3 mana, they spent 4 mana, and you still end up with that food token. But if you're destroying something bigger, you're still happy, even if you don't get the food token, because you've destroyed one of their big creatures, gotten a big trade up on mana. Being able to do it at instant speed is also really good because it means you can hold this up and wait for your opponent to play something big or worth killing. And sometimes you can even set up ambush scenarios where your opponent thinks they have you dead, they attack with a bunch of creatures, and then you Tainted Treats and sacrifice the food token mid-combat, gain some life they didn't expect while killing one of their threats, and then just completely swing the game in your favor. It's a great removal spell. You're always going to be happy to have it. And even though it's multiple colors and a little bit less flexible, it's still worth prioritizing. Next up is Metalhead. For 4 and a blue, you get a 4/4 legendary artifact creature, Robot Turtle. When Metalhead enters, you return up to 1 other target artifact or creature to its owner's hand, and then it has red, sacrifice another artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on Metalhead. He gains Menace and Haste until end of turn. Now, one of the great things about this card is even if you have no red mana in your deck, no ability to activate that other ability, the fact that you're getting a 5-mana 4/4 that bounces something is still going to be really good as a tempo play. If your opponent is on the front foot, you're able to use Metalhead, bounce one of their creatures, you're deploying a big blocker, you're going to be in really good shape. If you're on the front foot, then you can bounce one of their blockers, deploy a really big attacker, and you're in really good shape. And if you do have the ability to activate that red mode, the red ability, you get a big card that can sometimes even attack immediately with Menace for 5 damage, which can just absolutely end the game. It's just going to be great in pretty much every single scenario. As soon as you cast this card, you're going to be in a much better spot to win the game. And you can sometimes even bounce your own creatures to your hand if they are, for example, underneath a pacifism style effect or a removal spell that like leaves it in play. You can like bounce it back to your hand so then you can like save your own creatures. So Metalhead, a really good card for those reasons, and just going to be a card you're super happy having in any blue deck, and does get a little bit of a boost in blue-red when you can potentially activate that ability. Next up is Mighty Mutanimals. This card is messed up. 2 white for a 2/1 mutant rebel. When it enters, you create a 2/2 red mutant creature token. So already you're getting a 2/1 and a 2/2 for 4 mana, which is a pretty solid rate. And whenever another creature you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So right off the bat, you're getting a 2/1 and then the 2/2, and then the 2/2 is going to trigger the 2/1, so you can put a counter somewhere. So you're getting 5/4 worth of stats spread across 2 bodies, or you can even put the counter onto one of your other creatures that's already in play to maybe potentially attack with it and get the benefit from it immediately. But basically, Mighty Mutanimals has to be killed because it's going to be just providing you so much value over the course of the game. And if your opponent, even if they do kill it, you're going to be left with a resource. Oftentimes a 2/2 that maybe you put a counter on. So you're going to be left with like a 3/3 after your opponent's killed the Mutanimals. And if it sticks around, you're going to be left with an even more lasting advantage. This card is really, really strong because it demands an answer, but when it gets answered, you're still left with a like pretty significant advantage on the board. So really, really powerful card, definitely worth taking, and it's just great in any white deck. Next up is Death in the Family, really cheap, efficient removal spell. 1 and a black, instant, exile target creature with mana value 3 or less. Cheap interaction is at a premium in this format because the sneak mechanic rewards the black-white deck for getting ahead and being able to like have these attackers that come in early and then potentially like return them to hand, get these sneak creatures going. And so having cheap interaction to deal with those early enabler creatures is really important, and Death in the Family really does that well. You can also use Death in the Family just to get a mana advantage by killing a 3-drop for just 2 mana at instant speed, which is just going to help you pull ahead in the game. Getting these cheap interactive plays that are going to get you a mana advantage is really, really great in Limited, and doing it at instant speed is even better. So Death in the Family, a really good card that you're going to be happy taking early. Next up is another cheap interactive spell. Manhole Missile does a lot of the same things really well. 1 in a red for an instant, deal 3 damage to target creature. You may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. If you do, draw a card. So it's a cheap interactive spell that does all of the same things we were just talking about, where you get to interact early so your opponent can't snowball the game. You can also oftentimes kill even relatively like decent sized creatures late by dealing 3 damage. And in the late game, when dealing 3 is still solid but maybe not as good, you can like put back on the bottom of your deck an irrelevant card with your Manhole Missile to help you like get rid of extra lands, keep finding gas. And in the early turns, if you're missing land drops, really need to hit a land drop, you can use that, get rid of a spell, hope to draw a land with Manhole Missile. It's just a really nice removal spell that also gets you some like ability to dig through your deck, and that's going to be really, really nice. Next up is Koya, Death from Above. For 2 and a white, you get a 2/1 legendary creature, Mutant Ninja Bird. It has flying, and when Koya enters, exile up to 1 other target creature. At the beginning of the next end step, you may pay 3 and a black. If you don't, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So first up, this card is pretty good in just any white deck, even if you don't have black mana. So if you're playing this in white-red, it's still going to be pretty useful. One thing to note with Koya is you can exile your own creatures, or you can exile your opponent's creatures. So let's say your opponent has a creature token, maybe a 2/2 mutant. You play Koya, basically just get to kill a 2/2 by exiling it. It won't come back as a token. But if you have a creature on your side of the battlefield, maybe one that makes a token when it comes into play, you can play Koya, exile your own creature. It'll come back at the beginning of the next end step, and you get to re-trigger that enters effect. So Koya can do a lot of flexible things, so make sure you can know that you can target your opponent's stuff and you can target your own stuff. It can also like free your stuff if it's trapped under an enchantment or things like that. If your creature is like sitting in play but under an enchantment that makes it so it can't attack or block, for example. So Koya has that flexibility, but it's also really nice because if you're playing it in a deck that can use the black ability, then you get a card that just as a late game 7 mana, you get to like exile anything. And because it's in the black-white color combination where there's a lot of sneak cards, you can potentially cast Koya multiple times in the game. So you play Koya, maybe get to re-trigger an enters effect or get rid of one of your opponent's blockers temporarily, get an attack in. Then later on in the game, you use Koya, sneak something else, return Koya to your hand by using a sneak card. And because Koya has flying, it's going to oftentimes be able to get through for that damage. Then you sneak it back to your hand, play it again later. So Koya is kind of one of those cards that represents a big threat because over the course of the game, the more mana you get, the more likely your opponent is that you are going to be able to like return it to your hand and then use the 7 mana mode to just turn it into a recursive removal spell. So Koya, Death from Above, really good card in any white deck, but especially good in black-white. Next up is Dream Beavers. This is a card that's pretty much at its best in black-white. It's not as good in the green-black archetype, but even though it's not as flexible, once again, it's so good in the black-white deck that it's still worth prioritizing. For 1 mana, you get a 1/1 Beaver Nightmare. It's got flying, and when this creature enters, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life, scry 1. So you play Dream Beavers on turn 1. You get to scry 1 to set up your draws, and then it's like the perfect card for sneak decks because you want to return it to your hand, so you can drain your opponent for 1 more life and scry 1 again to keep setting up your draws. So Dream Beavers, if this gets played on turn 1, is going to be absolutely terrifying because there's a lot of sneak cards in the set. Flying on a 1-drop means that it's almost never going to get blocked. So early on in the game, it's going to be like usually you're going to be able to play a sneak card on this. Dream Beavers comes back to your hand. You get to drain your opponent for another life. And so Dream Beavers on its own can account for some damage just through the drains and by chipping in for 1 point of damage every so often. But it's also going to let your bigger sneak cards connect for their first hit and also do a lot of work there. So in your sneak decks, this card is an absolute house and it's worth prioritizing as a result. Next up, we have Courier of Comestibles. It's 1 and a green for a 1/2 human citizen. When this creature enters, you may search your library for a food card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. If you don't put a card into your hand this way, create a food token. Now, there are plenty of food cards in this set. There's a couple of creatures that are food creatures. There's a food removal spell in this set. There are a couple of like flexible food cards that can like fix your mana a little bit. There's definitely enough cards in the set that you should be able to find, if you have your Courier of Comestibles, a card to search up. Getting a food as a backup isn't the worst scenario, but you really want to be playing this card when you're searching up a spell to go get, because then it's a 2-mana 1/2 that drew you a spell, and that's going to be a pretty useful card to have access to, and one that you're going to be happy to play. And it's just really nice to have these cheap plays that also get you like a card back, because then if it trades off with one of your opponent's creatures, or it's just like sitting there, like make it so your opponent can't attack with maybe their 1/3s or their 1/1s or stuff like that, your Courier of Comestibles is getting you value while like on the board, while also having gotten you value by getting you another card from your deck to keep the cards flowing and let you still cast a bunch of relevant spells. So Courier of Comestibles, really nice card. And when you are getting a food card, you can sometimes like plan and maybe get like playing around having like a second copy of some key enablers or payoffs for your strategy or something like that, because Courier can give you more access to those food creatures. So keep that in mind. Courier is a really good card, but it does mean you have to prioritize those food cards a little bit, but a lot of them are pretty good anyway, so you're going to want to be taking them highly as anyway, and you're going to be pretty happy playing Courier. It's going to have more targets in a black-green deck, so keep that in mind when you do take the Courier of Comestibles early. And then the final card we're looking at is Lita, Little Orphan Amphibian. It's 1 and a white for a 2/1 legendary creature, Mutant Ninja Turtle. It has Alliance. Whenever another creature you control enters, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on Lita, create a food token, scry 1. So Lita is just going to be absolutely fantastic. You play it on turn 2, and then the rest of the game, every time you play a creature, it's either growing, it's making you food tokens, or it's scrying, which is all modes that can be really relevant. If you're on the back foot and you need that food token for some life gain, Lita's got you covered. If you want to just have a growing threat, Lita's also got you covered. Scrying 1 means that you're going to be able to filter your draws and hopefully find more action going forward, more creatures to play so you can scry more. Lita just does it all, and it only costs 2 mana, and it's just going to be excellent in any white deck. It fits great into the red-white deck. It fits great into the black-white deck. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic card that you're really happy playing, and it's one of those ones where it's a 2-drop, so it comes down for not like very early in the game, and then your opponent feels like they have to answer it. And so if your opponent only has like a premium removal spell, they're going to have to use their removal spell that can answer anything on a card that you only spent 2 mana on. So Lita is going to be really, really strong, and definitely a card that you should be taking very highly. That's going to do it for this one, though. Thank you for watching. If you made it to the end, leave hashtag 10 wins in the comment section down below, because these 10 cards are winners and will help you win more games. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.